Are you all right, miss?
I think so, thank you.
The rain was coming down hard that Tuesday evening. Sophia Miller hurried down the narrow streets of Brighton, holding her old leather bag tight against her chest. Inside were books from the store where she worked, precious cargo that she couldn't afford to replace if they got ruined. The wind was nasty, whipping her red hair across her face so she could barely see where she was going. She should have waited for the rain to stop. Should have taken the bus. But that was typical Sophia. Always rushing, always making things harder for herself. It happened at the corner of Ship Street. One second she was stepping around a big puddle, the next she was flat on her back on the wet ground. Her books went flying everywhere, pages getting soaked in the rain. "Oh God, I'm so sorry, are you hurt?" The voice was deep and smooth with an accent she couldn't quite place. Strong hands pulled her up, and through the rain and her embarrassment she got a quick look at him. Expensive suit. Shiny shoes that probably cost more than she made in a month. "My books," she said, more worried about them than her scraped hands. The stranger didn't hesitate. He got down on his knees right there in the puddles, gathering up her soggy books. His fancy suit was getting ruined, but he didn't seem to care. "Jane Eyre," he said, reading one of the covers. "Great book." "It's for book club at work," Sophia explained, taking the wet novels from him. "Thank you, you really didn't need to." That's when she really looked at him. Dark hair dripping with rain. Sharp cheekbones. Blue eyes that seemed to see right through her. He was the kind of handsome that belonged in movies or magazines. He looked familiar somehow, like someone from a dream she couldn't remember. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked, and his concern seemed real. "Yeah, fine. Just clumsy like always," she laughed, pushing her wet hair out of her face. "You should get out of this rain. Let me call you a taxi." "Oh no, I couldn't. I insist." He was already pulling out his phone, one of those expensive ones that cost more than Sophia made in weeks. "Where do you live?" "The lanes, but really I can walk." "Not in this weather." 5 minutes later, Sophia was sitting in the back of a fancy black car, watching the mysterious stranger disappear into the rain. She pressed her nose to the window, trying to get one last look at him, but he was already gone. When she got home to her tiny apartment above Mrs. Chen's tea shop, she realized something. She hadn't even asked his name. That night, she pulled out her journal, the same leather book she'd been writing in for 3 years. She started writing. What if he wasn't just some random guy? What if he was someone important, someone powerful, someone who could have any woman he wanted but chose to help me? What? She stopped, her pen hovering over the page. This was her secret. For years, she'd been writing stories about falling in love with rich, powerful men. Billionaires, princes, CEOs, men who were way out of her league. Love stories that would never happen to someone like her. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt real. What if he was looking for me too? A week later, Alexander Blake stood at the huge windows of his office 40 floors above London, but his mind wasn't on business. He kept thinking about red hair and nervous laughter. About a woman who had looked at him like he was just a regular guy who helped her pick up some books. When was the last time someone looked at him that way? When was the last time someone didn't know exactly who he was and what he was worth? "Sir?" His assistant's voice came through the speaker. "The Brighton team is here for the charity meeting." Alexander straightened his tie and tried to focus. Blake Industries wasn't just about making money, they also ran charity programs, and this new reading project was something he really cared about. "Send them in." 3 people walked into his office. His charity director, a local coordinator, and a woman who made his breath catch in his throat. "Mr. Blake," the coordinator said, "I'd like you to meet Sophia Miller. She runs Turning Pages, the bookstore we've chosen for the Brighton reading program." Sophia stepped forward, professional and composed, so different from the flustered woman he'd met in the rain. She wore a simple blue dress that made her eyes sparkle. Her hair was pulled back neatly, but it was definitely her. "Mr. Blake," she said, reaching out to shake his hand. "Nice to meet you." He took her hand, noticing the small callus on her finger, probably from turning book pages, and the way her eyes got wide when she recognized him. "Please call me Alexander. I've heard great things about your bookstore." "Thank you. I'm still shocked that Blake Industries chose us. We're pretty small compared to the chain stores. Sometimes the best things come in small packages," he said, and watched her cheeks turn pink. The meeting went well, but Alexander found himself watching Sophia more than listening to the presentations. She was passionate about helping people learn to read, spoke clearly about what her community needed, and didn't seem impressed by his fancy office. While the others kept looking around at his expensive art and the amazing view, she stayed focused on the project. It was refreshing and attractive. After the others left, Alexander walked Sophia to the elevator. "I hope you don't mind me asking," he said carefully, "but you seem familiar. Have we met before?" She paused with her hand on the elevator button. "Actually, yes. You helped me with my books in the rain last week. In Brighton, right?" He smiled, genuinely happy. Small world. Very small. The elevator doors opened. "Thanks again for that. And for this opportunity. Sophia," he said as she stepped inside, "would you have dinner with me? To talk about the project, of course." The doors were closing, but he caught her smile. Of course. For the project. That evening, Alexander did something he hadn't done in years. He canceled all his other meetings and drove himself to Brighton. No driver, no bodyguards, no entourage. Just him and the excitement of seeing her again. On the day of the date, Sophia stared at herself in the bookstore window, wondering if her black dress was too fancy for dinner with Alexander Blake. Alexander Blake. She still couldn't believe it was happening. The bookstore looked magical in the evening light, cozy and warm. The little lights she'd hung between the shelves glowed softly, and the smell of old books mixed with the lavender candles Mrs. Chen had given her. She'd spent the afternoon looking up Alexander online. What she found made her stomach flutter with nerves. Alexander Blake, 32, CEO of Blake Industries. Worth $2.8 billion. One of London's most eligible bachelors. He was exactly the kind of man she'd been writing about in her journal for years. It was exciting and terrifying at the same time. The door chimed, and Alexander walked into her bookstore, looking surprisingly comfortable among the messy shelves and mismatched furniture. "This place is wonderful," he said, running his fingers along an old copy of Pride and Prejudice. "It feels like stories live here." "That's exactly what I was going for." Sophia joined him by the classic book section. He seemed genuinely interested, not just being polite. "Most people think I'm crazy for keeping so many old books, but there's something special about books with history. Each one has been held by dozens of people, carried their dreams. Like this one," Alexander said, pulling out a worn copy of Jane Eyre. "Someone really loved this book. Several people, actually. That copy has been traded in 3 times over the years. I can never bring myself to sell it, it always comes back to me. A book with destiny. Something like that." They walked through the store together, and Sophia found herself relaxing as Alexander asked thoughtful questions about her work, her customers, her dreams for the reading program. He wasn't what she'd expected from a billionaire CEO. He was warmer, more real, more interested in her thoughts than in showing off his wealth. Dinner was at a small Italian restaurant tucked into one of Brighton's hidden alleys. Alexander had reserved a private section, but it felt intimate rather than showy. "Tell me something about yourself that's not in the business magazines," Sophia said over wine that probably cost more than her weekly groceries. Alexander laughed. "You've been reading about me. Research. For the project. Of course." His eyes sparkled with humor. "Something not in the magazines? I wanted to be a teacher when I was young. Before my father died and I had to take over the company." "What would you have taught?" "Literature, actually. I have an English degree from Cambridge that I never use." "That explains how you knew Jane Eyre earlier." "Guilty. I love books, despite what the business press might say." He leaned forward, looking serious. "What about you? What did you want to be before you became Brighton's favorite bookseller?" "A writer," she admitted, then immediately felt stupid. "I mean, I still write, just not professionally." "What do you write?" "Oh, just journal stuff. Nothing important." She could feel her face getting red. "Personal things. The best writing is always personal." As the evening went on, Sophia found herself opening up in ways she never had before. Alexander listened with real interest, asked follow-up questions, remembered details from hours earlier. When he walked her back to her flat, it had started raining again, and they took shelter under Mrs. Chen's shop awning. "I had a wonderful time tonight," Alexander said, standing closer than he probably should. "Me too. Thank you for dinner." "Sophia," he said quietly, "I'd really like to see you again. And not just for the project." Before she could answer, he leaned down and kissed her softly. His lips were warm against hers in the cool night air. It was gentle, asking permission, and when she kissed him back, she heard him make a soft sound of pleasure. "Good night," he whispered against her lips. "Good night." She watched him disappear into the rain, then climbed the stairs to her apartment in a daze. That night, she wrote in her journal with shaking hands. "It's happening. Everything I've ever dreamed about is actually happening. He's perfect, kind, smart, loves books, and he kissed me like I was something precious. But what if he finds out about all the stories I've written? What if he discovers that I've been fantasizing about exactly this for years? Would he think I'm pathetic? A gold digger? Someone who only wants his money? God, what if I'm becoming everything I've always written about and I don't even know it? She closed the journal and held it against her chest, trying to keep her secrets safe. Outside her window, Brighton sparkled with rain and possibility. In another vein, Victoria Hayes had been watching Alexander Blake for 7 years. 7 long years of positioning herself perfectly, close enough to his social circle to get invited to the right parties, successful enough as a gallery owner to be considered his equal, beautiful enough to look good next to him in photos. She'd been patient. She'd played the long game. And she'd been winning, slowly but surely, until that nobody bookstore girl appeared out of nowhere. "Darling, you look absolutely furious," said Edward Collins, sliding into the seat across from her at their exclusive club in London. "Let me guess, our friend Alexander is still playing house with his little shopkeeper?" Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers tightened around her champagne glass. "It's been 2 weeks, Edward. 2 weeks of watching him moon over some nobody from Brighton." Edward was Alexander's head of public relations and Victoria's sometimes partner in the complicated game of high society. He leaned back in his leather chair, amused. "You know, I actually met her. Sophia Miller. She's quite pretty in a wholesome girl-next-door way. How wonderfully common. The thing is," Edward continued thoughtfully, "Alexander seems really taken with her. I haven't seen him this interested in anyone since, well, ever." Victoria felt ice in her veins. She'd assumed this was just another fling, another brief distraction before Alexander came to his senses and realized what was right in front of him. But if Edward was right, if Alexander was serious about this woman, there has to be something, she said, her voice sharp. Some secret, some flaw, some reason why she's completely wrong for him. Edward studied her face with the calculating look that had made him one of London's top PR fixers. "Victoria, darling, maybe it's time to accept that Alexander might actually be happy." "No." She set her glass down hard. "I've invested too much time, too much energy, too much of myself in this. That little bookworm is not going to waltz in and steal my future." "What exactly are you suggesting?" Victoria smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "I'm suggesting we do what we do best, darling. We control the story." Meanwhile, in Brighton, Sophia was living what felt like a beautiful dream. Alexander had been coming to see her every few days, sometimes for business meetings about the reading program, sometimes just to take her to dinner or walk along the beach. Each time she found herself falling deeper. He brought her first editions of books she'd mentioned loving, sent flowers to the store with handwritten notes, and listened with genuine interest when she talked about her customers and their stories. When he kissed her, which was happening more often and with more passion, she felt like she was living in one of the romance novels she sold. But fairy tales come with complications. "Sophia, dear," Mrs. Chin said one morning as she brought tea to the bookstore, "there have been photographers around the shop." "Photographers?" "Yes, with big cameras. They've been asking questions about you, about your gentleman friend." Mrs. Chen looked worried. "Maybe you should be careful." That afternoon, as Sophia was helping a customer find a cookbook, she noticed a man with a big camera lens across the street, clearly taking pictures of the store. Her stomach dropped. She was still thinking about the photographers when Alexander arrived that evening, looking tense. "We need to talk," he said without his usual warm greeting. They went upstairs to her flat, and Alexander immediately started pacing her small living room like a trapped animal. "The press has found out about us," he said finally. "I'm sorry, Sophia. I tried to keep this private, but someone told them." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means our relationship is about to become very public. There will be photographers, reporters, questions about who you are and why I'm with you." He stopped pacing and looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. "I can protect you from most of it, but not all. And I need to know, are you ready for that kind of attention?" Sophia sank onto her couch, her mind spinning. "I don't know. I mean, I knew you were successful, but I didn't realize that dating me would make you a target?" His voice was bitter. "Welcome to my world, Sophia. Everyone wants something, everyone has an angle, and everyone's watching to see who gets close enough to benefit. Is that what you think I'm doing?" The question came out sharper than she meant. "Trying to benefit?" Alexander's expression softened immediately. "No. God, no. That's exactly why I'm worried about you. You're not built for this world, Sophia. You're too genuine, too trusting. People like Victoria Hayes will destroy you. Victoria Hayes? Someone I used to know. She runs in the same social circles, and she's not happy about my involvement with you. He sat down beside her, taking her hands. I'm telling you this because I care about you, and because I want you to be ready for what's coming. What's coming? War, he said simply. Against us, against our relationship, against everything good between us. And they'll use everything they can find about your past, your dreams, your private thoughts as weapons. Sophia felt a chill as she thought about her journal, tucked away in her bedside table drawer. All those fantasies about billionaire princes, all those romantic scenarios she'd invented. What would people think if they found out? What would Alexander think? Maybe we should slow down, she said quietly. Maybe this is all happening too fast. Is that what you want? She looked into his eyes and saw something that made her heart ache. Vulnerability, fear, the look of a man who'd been hurt too many times. No, she whispered. But I'm scared. So am I, he admitted, pulling her into his arms. But I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you, Sophia. And I'm not going to let anyone take that away from us. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, and Sophia tried to lose herself in the feeling. But even as she kissed him back, she couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere in London, people were already planning their destruction. One sunny afternoon, an invitation came on expensive cream paper with Victoria Hayes's gallery logo in gold. You are invited to the opening of Modern Romantics, Love in the Digital Age. Cocktails, conversation, and contemporary art. Black tie requested. Alexander studied the invitation suspiciously. She's never invited me to one of her openings before. Maybe she's trying to make peace, Sophia suggested, though she didn't really believe it. They were in Alexander's London penthouse, where Sophia had been spending more time lately. The view of the Thames was spectacular, but she still felt more comfortable in her little flat above Mrs. Chen's shop. Victoria doesn't make peace, Alexander said grimly. She sets traps. Despite his worries, they decided to go. Sophia spent the afternoon shopping for something appropriate to wear to her first high society event, finally choosing a midnight blue dress that was elegant without being too flashy. As Alexander's driver pulled up to the gallery, she took a deep breath and tried to feel confident. The gallery was packed with London's elite, all air kisses and champagne glasses and conversations that sounded important but meant nothing. Sophia recognized faces from magazines and gossip websites, felt the weight of curious stares as Alexander introduced her around. Sophia Miller, people repeated like they were testing how her name sounded. The bookstore owner from Brighton. Victoria made her entrance fashionably late, stunning in a red dress that probably cost more than Sophia's rent. She moved through the crowd like she owned not just the gallery but everyone in it, accepting congratulations and air kisses with practiced grace. When she finally approached Alexander and Sophia, her smile was perfect and absolutely deadly. Alexander, darling. She kissed both his cheeks, letting her hands linger on his arms. How wonderful that you could make it. Victoria. Alexander's voice was carefully neutral. Congratulations on the show. Victoria, I'd like you to meet Sophia Miller. Victoria turned to Sophia with that same perfect smile, but her eyes were calculating, measuring. Of course, the famous bookstore owner. I've heard so much about you. Victoria's handshake was firm, her nails sharp. You must tell me, what's it like dating London's most eligible bachelor? Quite the upgrade from Brighton, I imagine. Alexander is wonderful, Sophia replied, keeping her voice steady. But I don't think of our relationship in terms of upgrades. How refreshing. Most women do. The conversation was interrupted by a photographer who wanted shots of Victoria with Alexander. As they posed together, Victoria's hand possessively on Alexander's arm, Sophia felt like she was watching a preview of the life Alexander had lived before her. Glamorous, sophisticated, effortless. She was studying a painting of lovers embracing in what looked like a penthouse when Edward Collins appeared beside her. Thinking about the art? He asked pleasantly. That's one of my favorites. Something about the way the artist captured the fantasy of it all. Fantasy? Oh yes. The whole modern fairy tale. Ordinary girl meets extraordinary man, gets swept off her feet into a world of luxury and romance. It's what dreams are made of, isn't it? There was something in his tone that made Sophia look at him more carefully. Edward was handsome in a polished way, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. Is it? She asked carefully. Well, we all have fantasies, don't we? Daydreams about the life we wish we could have, the person we wish we could be with. His eyes glittered. I imagine a bookstore owner has quite an active imagination. Before Sophia could respond, Alexander appeared at her side, his expression dark. "Edward," he said curtly. "Enjoying the show?" "Very much. I was just discussing art with Miss Miller. She has interesting insights into fantasy and reality." "I'm sure she does." Alexander's hand found Sophia's waist, both possessive and protective. "If you'll excuse us." As they walked away, Sophia could feel Edward's eyes following them. "What was that about?" she asked. "Edward likes to play games," Alexander said. "And you're not a game, Sophia?" But as the evening went on, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that she had somehow become a piece on a chessboard, and the other players knew rules she didn't understand. The real blow came near the end of the evening as they were preparing to leave. Victoria approached with a small group of friends, all looking like they shared a delicious secret. "Before you go," Victoria said sweetly, "I simply must tell you about the most amusing thing that happened today. Someone sent me the most interesting reading material, a journal, actually, filled with the most elaborate romantic fantasies. The author has quite an imagination when it comes to billionaire princes and fairy tale romances." Sophia's blood turned to ice. "I'm sorry?" "Oh, it's not important. Just funny how life copies art sometimes, don't you think?" Victoria's smile was razor sharp. "Or should I say how art predicts life?" Alexander's grip on Sophia's arm tightened. "What are you talking about, Victoria?" "Nothing at all, darling. Just admiring the power of dreams to become reality." She raised her champagne glass in a mock toast. "To getting everything you've ever wished for." As they left the gallery, Sophia felt like she was walking through a nightmare. Someone had her journal. Someone knew about all her fantasies, all her private dreams, all her embarrassing romantic scenarios about billionaire princes and fairy tale endings. And tomorrow she had a terrible feeling the whole world would know too. The first text came at 5:47 in the morning. "Check the Daily Mirror website. I'm so sorry. Mrs. Chin." Sophia grabbed her laptop with shaking hands, dreading what she would find. The headline hit her like a punch to the stomach. "Gold Digger's Diary. Bookstore Girl's Secret Fantasies About Billionaire Blake Exposed." Below it, "Leaked Journal Reveals Elaborate Romantic Dreams About Wealthy Men." Did Sophia Miller plan their chance meeting? Her journal entries were there, displayed for the entire world to read. Her private thoughts about meeting a mysterious billionaire, her romantic daydreams, her fantasies about being swept off her feet by someone wealthy and powerful. But the context was gone, replaced by commentary that painted her as a calculating gold digger who had planned their entire relationship. In one particularly telling entry, the article read, Miller writes, "What if he was someone powerful, someone who could have any woman he wanted, but chose to help a nobody like me?" Sources close to Blake Industries suggest this chance encounter in the rain may have been carefully planned. Her phone started ringing immediately. Unknown numbers, blocked calls, reporters wanting statements. She turned it off and collapsed onto her couch, the laptop still open to the article that was destroying her life. By noon, the story had been picked up by every major newspaper and gossip website. TV news shows were discussing it, social media was buzzing with opinions, and photographers had set up camp outside her bookstore. Mrs. Chen brought her tea in sympathy. "I'm so sorry, dear. I tried to keep them away from the shop, but there are so many of them." "How did they get my journal?" Sophia asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Someone broke in last night after you left for London. They didn't take anything valuable, just made a mess looking for something specific." Victoria. It had to be Victoria, though Sophia couldn't prove it. Alexander arrived that afternoon, pushing through the crowd of reporters with his security team. His face was thunderous, and for the first time since they'd met, he looked every inch the powerful, intimidating billionaire. "Are you all right?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "No," she whispered against his chest. "Alexander, I can explain." "You don't need to explain anything to me," he said fiercely. "This is character assassination, pure and simple." But even as he held her, Sophia could see the questions in his eyes. The doubt. The wondering if maybe the articles were right, if she had been playing a longer game than he'd realized. "Those things I wrote," she began, "they were just fantasies, just dreams," he said quietly. "I know. Do you? Because the way you're looking at me right now." Alexander pulled back, his hands still on her shoulders. "Sophia, I need you to understand something. In my world, people lie. They manipulate. They create elaborate schemes to get close to me, to my money. I've been burned before. You think I did this on purpose?" "I don't know what to think." The admission seemed to hurt him. The timing, the journal entries, the way everything lined up so perfectly. Get out. Sophia. Get out. She pushed against his chest, anger replacing heartbreak. If you can believe even for a second that I'm some kind of con artist, then you don't know me at all. That's not what I'm saying. It's exactly what you're saying. You're saying that everything between us, everything I felt for you, was part of some elaborate scheme to get your money. Tears were streaming down her face now. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel? Alexander looked stricken. I'm just trying to protect yourself. You're trying to protect yourself. Sophia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I was a fool to think someone like me could be with someone like you. The whole world is right. We don't belong together. Don't say that. It's true, isn't it? I'm too ordinary, too common, too naive for your world. And you're too suspicious, too jaded, too afraid to trust anyone to be in mine. Alexander stood there for a long moment, looking like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Finally, he turned and walked toward the door. Alexander, she called after him. When you figure out who you want to believe, me or the headlines, you know where to find me. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything. The truth comes out. Edward Collins sat in his expensive office, watching the news coverage of the Sophia Miller scandal with satisfaction. His phone had been ringing all morning, reporters wanting quotes, society friends wanting gossip, and most importantly, Alexander Blake wanting his advice on damage control. The situation is under control, Edward told Alexander during their emergency meeting that evening. The media is painting you as the victim of an elaborate con. Your reputation is safe. Alexander paced Edward's office like a caged animal. I don't care about my reputation. I want to know how her private journal ended up in the newspapers. Does it matter? The damage is done. Edward leaned back in his leather chair, studying his old friend. Alexander, surely you can see that this is for the best. The woman was clearly obsessed with you before you even met. The journal entries prove it. The journal entries prove she has an imagination. They prove she's been fantasizing about exactly this scenario for years. How do you know the meeting in the rain wasn't planned? How do you know she didn't research your movements, plan to bump into you? Alexander stopped pacing and stared at Edward with eyes that could freeze hell. Because I know her. She's not capable of that level of deception. Everyone is capable of deception when the stakes are high enough. What's your angle here, Edward? Alexander's voice was dangerously quiet. You've been pushing me away from Sophia since day one. Why? Edward's composure slipped slightly. I'm your friend. I'm protecting you from making a mistake that could destroy everything you've built. Or you want something for yourself. The accusation hung in the air between them like a loaded weapon. Edward's carefully neutral expression cracked, revealing something hungry and desperate underneath. She's not right for you, Edward said finally. She's a small-town nobody with big dreams and limited options. Someone like that might be interested in a more suitable arrangement. Jesus Christ. Alexander's voice was disgusted. You set this whole thing up, didn't you? The journal leak, the media circus turning me against her, all so you could swoop in and play her rescuer. I'm offering her a way out of this mess. A chance to start over somewhere new, with someone who appreciates her for who she is rather than what she represents. What she represents? A liability. A weakness. A sentimental mistake that could cost you billions. Edward stood up, his mask finally completely off. I've watched you build this empire from nothing, Alexander. I won't let you throw it away for some romantic fairy tale. Alexander moved so fast that Edward didn't have time to react. One moment Edward was standing behind his desk, the next he was pressed against the wall with Alexander's hand around his throat. Where is her journal? Alexander's voice was deadly calm. I don't know what you're talking about. The original. Where is it? Edward's eyes darted to his office safe, and Alexander released him with a sound of disgust. You stole from her. You violated her privacy, destroyed her reputation, and for what? To get my attention? To save you from yourself. No, Alexander said quietly. To satisfy your own jealousy. He pulled out his phone and began dialing. By tomorrow morning, every newspaper in London will know exactly who leaked Sophia Miller's private journal and why. Your career in PR is over, Edward. And if you ever come near her again, I'll destroy you completely. He walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Edward? You're fired. Meanwhile, in Brighton, Sophia was discovering that scandal was a lonely business. Her regular customers stayed away, afraid to be associated with the woman the media had painted as a gold-digging manipulator. The few people who did visit the bookstore came looking for gossip rather than books. She was restocking the romance section. The irony wasn't lost on her when she heard voices near the front of the store. "I can't believe she had the nerve to open today," someone whispered. "After what everyone knows about her. Did you see those journal entries? Absolutely shameless. I heard she's been planning this for years. Following him around, learning his habits." Sophia closed her eyes and leaned her forehead against the bookshelf. This was her life now, whispers and stares and assumptions about her character based on out-of-context pieces of her private thoughts. The door chimed, and she looked up to see Victoria Hayes standing in her bookstore like a perfectly dressed predator. "Miss Miller." Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion. What do you want?" "To apologize, actually." Victoria moved through the store with predatory grace, running her fingers along the book spines. "Things got rather out of hand, didn't they? You stole my journal. I prefer to think of it as research. You understand the importance of knowing one's competition." "Competition for what?" Victoria's laugh was like ice breaking. "For Alexander, of course. Though I suppose that's over now, isn't it? He hasn't been to see you since the story broke." Sophia's heart clenched, but she kept her voice steady. "What Alexander and I have is between us." Darling. Past tense. Victoria picked up a copy of Pride and Prejudice and flipped through it dismissively. "You know, I almost feel sorry for you. All those romantic dreams, all those fairy tale fantasies, and this is how they end. With you alone in a bookstore, your reputation in ruins, your Prince Charming nowhere to be found. Get out." "I'm trying to help you, Sophia. You could disappear quietly, start over somewhere new. I have connections. I could arrange something comfortable for you. Far from London. Far from Alexander." "I said get out." Victoria set the book down with deliberate care. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Alexander will never trust you again. You must see that. The doubt is already there, eating away at whatever feelings he had for you. Soon there will be nothing left but suspicion and resentment. You don't know him. I know him better than you ever will. I've been part of his world for 7 years. 7 years of patience, of positioning myself perfectly, of being everything he needs in a partner." Victoria's perfect composure cracked slightly, revealing the desperation beneath. "You were a momentary distraction. A curiosity. But curiosity fades, and when it does, he'll realize who he really needs. If you're so perfect for him, why are you here?" Sophia asked quietly. "Why aren't you with him right now, comforting him through this difficult time?" Victoria's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "Because he's still caught up in your little spell. But spells break, Sophia. And when this one does, I'll be there to pick up the pieces." She walked to the door, then paused. "You know what's funny? All those fantasies you wrote about, the romantic rescues, the declarations of love, the happy endings, none of it was real. It was all just a silly girl's dreams. Reality is much harsher, isn't it?" The door closed behind her with a soft chime that sounded like mockery. Sophia sank into one of her reading chairs and finally let the tears come. Victoria was right about one thing. Alexander hadn't been to see her since the story broke. No calls, no texts, no visits. Just silence that spoke louder than any words. Maybe this was how fairy tales really ended. Not with happy ever after, but with the princess alone in her tower, realizing the prince was never really hers to begin with. The next morning brought a new headline that made Sophia's blood freeze. Blake Industries PR chief fired over journal scandal. Edward Collins orchestrated leak to discredit Sophia Miller. The article was detailed and damning. Phone records showing calls between Edward and Victoria Hayes. Security footage of Edward entering Sophia's building the night her journal was stolen. Financial records proving he'd paid a tabloid reporter for the story. But the most shocking revelation was buried in the middle of the article. Sources close to the investigation reveal that Collins may have been motivated by romantic interest in Miller himself, viewing her relationship with Blake as an obstacle to his own pursuit of the bookstore owner. Sophia's phone started ringing immediately. This time she answered. "Sophia?" Alexander's voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. "Did you see the news?" "Yes. I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have known." "You should have," she agreed, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "But you didn't. I was scared. People have lied to me before, used me, and when I saw those journal entries." "You saw what you expected to see. What you were trained to see." Sophia closed her eyes. "I understand why you doubted me, Alexander. But understanding doesn't make it hurt less. Let me make it up to you. Let me? No. The word came out stronger than she felt. I can't do this anymore. I can't be with someone who will always be looking for proof that I'm lying to him. I can't live under that kind of suspicion. Sophia, please? I need time to think. To figure out who I am without all this chaos. She was crying now, but her voice remained steady. You were right about one thing. I'm not built for your world. I'm too soft, too trusting, too ordinary. You're none of those things. I am, and that's okay. But it means we want different things, live in different worlds. She took a shaky breath. Goodbye, Alexander. She hung up before he could respond, then turned off her phone and sat in the silence of her bookstore, surrounded by stories of love that always seemed to end better than real life. The rain was falling again when Alexander Blake walked into Turning Pages on a quiet Tuesday evening. He looked older somehow, more serious, but his eyes still held that same intensity that had taken her breath away all those months ago. Sophia looked up from the book she was reading, Jane Eyre, naturally, and felt her heart do that familiar skip. Hello, Sophia. Alexander. She closed the book carefully, using the time to steady herself. This is unexpected. I know I said I'd give you time, and I have. But I needed to see you. He moved deeper into the store, his hands in his pockets like a nervous schoolboy. I've been reading your column in the Herald. It's brilliant. Thank you. You wrote about second chances last week. About how the best stories give their characters opportunities to grow, to become better than they were. Sophia watched him carefully. I did. I was hoping, he said quietly, that real life might work the same way. Alexander. I know I hurt you. I know I let fear and past betrayals cloud my judgment when I should have trusted what I knew about you. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the sincerity in his eyes. I've spent 2 months thinking about what you said about suspicion and trust and what kind of man I want to be. And what kind of man is that? The kind who deserves someone like you. The kind who chooses love over fear, trust over suspicion. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a familiar leather journal, her journal. Edward had this in his safe. I thought you might want it back. Sophia took the journal with trembling hands. I'd almost forgotten about it. I read it, Alexander admitted. Not just the parts that were in the papers, but all of it. Every page, every dream, every fantasy. Sophia's cheeks burned. Alexander, you had no right. You're right, I didn't. But I'm glad I did, because it helped me understand something important. He stepped closer. Those weren't the fantasies of a gold digger. They were the dreams of a woman who believes in love, who sees the best in people, who imagines a world where fairy tales can come true. They're just stories. They're hope, he said simply. And I realized that hope is exactly what I've been missing from my life. What you brought to my life. Sophia looked down at the journal in her hands, then back up at Alexander. What are you saying? I'm saying that I love you. Not because you're convenient or suitable or good for my image, but because you make me want to be the kind of man who deserves to be loved in return. He took her hands, journal and all. I'm saying that I want to be your fairy tale, and I want you to be mine. This isn't a fairy tale, Alexander. This is real life, with real problems and real complications. Then let's make it a better real life. Together. He brought her hands to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. I can't promise you a perfect love story, Sophia. But I can promise you a real one, with a man who will choose to trust you every day, who will fight for us every day, who will love you every day. Sophia felt tears stinging her eyes. I'm scared. So am I. But you taught me that the best things happen when we're brave enough to take chances on them. Did I teach you that? Every day. In the way you run this bookstore, the way you connect with your customers, the way you put your heart into everything you do. He smiled, and it was the smile she'd fallen in love with all those months ago. The way you took a chance on a stranger in the rain. Sophia looked around her bookstore, at the fairy lights and mismatched furniture, at the books that had been her constant companions, at the life she'd built for herself. It was a good life, a full life. But as she looked back at Alexander, she realized it could be even better. What exactly are you proposing? She asked. That we start over. Properly this time. No scandals, no interference, no rushing. Just you and me getting to know each other again. He paused, then grinned. I promise not to fire any more employees for falling in love with you. Despite everything, Sophia laughed. That's very considerate of you. I'm a considerate billionaire. It's my brand now. She was quiet for a long moment, weighing everything he'd said against everything they'd been through. Finally, she made her decision. Alexander? Yes. Would you like to have dinner with me? To discuss literature, of course. His smile was brilliant. Of course. For literature. The wedding was small and perfect, held in the garden behind Turning Page's bookstore, with fairy lights strung between the trees and Mrs. Chen providing the catering. Sophia's dress was simple and elegant, and Alexander's eyes never left her face during the entire ceremony. Victoria Hayes had moved to New York, where she'd opened a new gallery and, according to the gossip magazines, was dating a tech mogul. Edward Collins had disappeared from London society entirely, though rumors placed him somewhere in Australia, working for a small PR firm. As for Alexander and Sophia, they'd kept their promise to start over properly. They'd dated like normal people, dinners and movies and walks along Brighton Pier. They'd fought and made up and learned to trust each other completely. Alexander had moved some of his operations to Brighton to be closer to her, and Sophia had expanded the bookstore with his help, adding a cafe and hosting author readings. Their love story wasn't the fantasy Sophia had written about in her journal all those years ago. It was better, messier, more complicated, more real, but infinitely more satisfying. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, with the bookstore's fairy lights twinkling around them and their friends and family watching with tears in their eyes, Sophia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. "What are you thinking about?" Alexander murmured in her ear. "Just that life is stranger than fiction," she said, looking up at him. "I used to write stories about meeting a mysterious billionaire in the rain. And now you're married to one." "Now I'm married to you," she corrected. "The billionaire part is just a bonus." He spun her around and her laughter echoed through the Brighton night. Somewhere in the bookstore, her old journal sat on a shelf next to their wedding album, a reminder that sometimes if you're very lucky and very brave, dreams really can come true. Just not always in the way you expect them to.
If you love this story and would love to be notified when our next story drops, please do not hesitate to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comment. We are trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the week. Kindly help our community grow by sharing this story with your family and friends. Until the next video, remember that your dreams are valid, and they can happen to you in the most unexpected fashion. And while you wait for your dreams, please stay healthy and beautiful.